Hi, this is Judge J.P. here at Comic Town.
I'm Eric Griffin, here with Comic Town as well.
And we're here to open up a box of the new set, Oath of the Gatewatch, for you. But before we get to that, we have a couple of announcements to run by you. First, if you haven't been to our website for a couple months, our website, comictown.net, is now hosting articles for Magic the Gathering and also daily decks for Magic the Gathering. We've got some of the best up-and-coming players here in the Midwest who are creating content for us there, so make sure you head over to comictown.net to check out that new information that's on there. Other things we have happening here at the store, we have Win-A-Box Month coming up here in a moment. Could you explain to them what Win-A-Box Month is, Eric?
Basically, every Friday from launch of Oath of the Gatewatch, which is this Friday, through the next 4 weeks, both of our draft and F&M standard events will be Win-A-Box events. So essentially, we'll be giving away was it 3 boxes?
Yep, we give away 3 boxes to 1st through 8th place. So it's a really good deal. We'd love to see you down here for F&M, but what we'd like to see you in Columbus for even more is the Comic Town Winter Classic, held at the Columbus Courtyard West on January 23rd. At that event, we're going to be giving away $5,000 in cash prizes to the top 32 finishers, as well as a custom playmat that you're going to see in just a moment to the top 16 finishers in that event. We also have 2 modern side events that weekend. On Saturday at the Columbus Courtyard West, we have a Grand Prix trial for Grand Prix Detroit, where we're giving away a case of the new set in prizes to top 8, as well as a modern invitational qualifier for the Star City Games Invitational Series on Sunday here at Comic Town. We hope to see you at one of these events, but now let's get to this box. As you can see here, this is quite a bit of the custom mat that we're going to be giving away at the Comic Town Winter Classic on January 23rd. You can see the full image of this mat at our Facebook page, which is Comic Town Gaming Center. But for now, let's get to what we actually are here for, which is opening a box of Oath of the Gatewatch. First card we have here on top is the Buy Box promotional card, which is Goblin Dark Dwellers, which I think is an interesting start for a red control deck in Standard.
I agree as well. Maybe a Jeskai control list, or maybe just a more Jund-style list that we haven't really seen in the past couple years or so.
Right. It's like we had a really controlling build of Jeskai Black, which I think could be interesting to see this guy slot in there, along with Jace to keep flashing back spells. But I think also with Chandra, the new Chandra that we have in the set, Flame Caller, could be interesting to see almost a near mono-red control version coming out with this card and some other cheap burn with Chandra sweeping in. But for now, let's go ahead and tear into our box, which we pre-cut to make so that I didn't have to struggle with the cellophane like I have in past videos. All right. There are the beautifully wrapped packages, all featuring the Oath cards that have each of the different Planeswalkers on them. Let's go ahead and dive into our first booster pack. So as is traditional with our reviews, we're going to go ahead and at least show the other commons and uncommons in the pack as we go to the rare. But we're going to be mostly talking about the rares in the set, and any foils that we open, we'll discuss those as we come to them. So let's see what we opened in this pack. And our rare in this pack is Eldrazi Displacer, which, if you head to comictown.net, I just posted a daily deck that uses this guy, along with Siege Rhinos and Wingmate Rocks, to create an interesting standard deck. As a 3/3 for 3, he's very, very useful, but there's also this weird symbol in the activation cost. What is that, Griff?
That is the new colorless symbol that they introduced to us back at, was it Pro Tour?
They introduced it not during a Pro Tour. They introduced it during the World Championships.
During World Champs. You can get out of the waste that you actually saw earlier in the booster pack, and it's also a bunch of the different, not basic lands, now actually produce the specific colorless symbol.
Right. If you see anything that used to tap for what would be considered a colorless mana before, it now produce this diamond symbol, which you can use on the activation cost of a lot of the Eldrazi spells to cast them, or the activation cost of these Eldrazi themselves. This guy, you can activate his ability by playing 2 generic mana and 1 colorless mana to exile another target creature, and then return it under its owner's control tapped. This is really useful if you want to get extra enter the battlefield effects out of your creatures, like we talked about with Siege Rhino, which keeps draining your opponent for 3 when you flicker him out.
And there are a few other really interesting cards in Standard that we can make use of. We have the new Limvala, which could be actually kind of interesting with this one. as well as, say, Green Ward of Marasa, Wingmate Rock, maybe even going down a little lower on the curve with, say, like Catacomb Sifter.
Exactly. But for now, we do still have the full art basic lands that we've seen before, and we have an Eldrazi Sound token featuring that colorless mana symbol. And let's head to the next pack.
All right, well, this is taking way too long. We need to actually get to the fun stuff.
All right, and we have
Overwhelming Denial. It's a new counterspell. This one is a little interesting. The surge mechanic is really something new something we really have not seen before.
And for those of you who are watching and maybe can't see this in full resolution, Surge provides an alternate casting cost for the spell that you can trigger if you have cast a spell this turn already, or if you're playing in an environment where you have a teammate, if they have cast a spell already this turn, you can trigger the Surge cost as well.
I don't really think much else to say about this card. It's something that might see some play.
The nice thing about this is it is a 2-mana unconditional counterspell if you've countered anything this turn, and the fact that it can't be countered by spells and abilities could see it slotting into an Esper Dragons or an Esper control list. But for now, what else we have?
Doesn't look like we have a foil.
But we do have a beautiful land.
Beautiful elemental token, actually.
As well. All right, let's head to the next pack. All right, let's check out our next pack of Oath of the Gatewatch. And well, we only have 2 uncommons, or we had the 3 uncommons, but there is an extra card back here. Oh, nope, I just miscounted. But we do have one of the marquee mythics of this set in Kozilek's Return. This has been causing a lot of discussion because people are talking about it making waves in not only standard but also modern. When you cast this spell, it is an instant, so you can cast it at any time, and it deals 2 damage to each creature on the battlefield for 2 and a red mana. So that's creating a pyroclasm effect, which we've seen a lot of times before.
Yeah, but we really don't see them often at instant speed.
Correct. Instant speed is a little odd, although for 3 mana, we've seen cards like Volcanic Fallout before.
Yeah, but it's been quite a while since we've seen those type of cards.
The bigger trigger is at the bottom, which if it's in your graveyard and you cast an Eldrazi of 7 or greater, you're dealing 5 damage to everything if you exile this card. That is a huge and game-swinging effect that I think we're going to see make waves both in Standard and Modern, especially in a Charm list.
Absolutely, and even like the red-green Eldrazi list in Standard has a lot of trouble at times dealing with cards like Siege Rhino.
Right.
This gives them a conditional way to get rid of multiple Siege Rhinos on the board.
Exactly. And of course, we do have that full art basic land and a Knight Ally token. Let's head to the next pack. Sometimes we struggle, and it's okay. Let's head right on down to that rare that we have in the pack. And our rare this time is Bearer of Silence. So Bearer of Silence is a 1 in the black devoid flyer that can't block, which seems like it's not that great a card, but it's got an interesting cast trigger, and again we see that colorless mana symbol.
Yeah, this card is actually really interesting. I've kind of... A deck list that we may see pop up on the daily deck list is maybe like some version of a mono-black aggressive type of Eldrazi strategy, which I think could be very possible in this format.
Right. We've actually seen 2 decks so far. We have the Red Black list by Brian Damaris that I posted on Tuesday, and then Lexi actually mentioned this in her deck that came live today about being in her Grixis Eldrazi aggro list, where she was using this to get rid of stuff in Esper Dragons, like the different Dragon Lords that they would drop since they really only have 1 creature on the battlefield at a time.
I mean, Ojatai will be a particularly painful card for this type of a deck to deal with, so having a way to have them sacrifice it seems pretty good.
We, of course, have the full art land and the zombie token here. Let's head to our next pack. And what do we have in the pack?
We have another mythic. We have Linvala the Preserver. First go around, Linvala was a really good card. She saw a lot of play in modern pod decks. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she saw a little bit of play in Standard as well.
A little bit of play. There was still the Splinter Twin combo that ended up coming out when we had Scars of Mirrodin in the format that she was used to stop that specific iteration of Splinter Twin.
But this one in particular, I think could actually be a good finisher in a Esper style control deck that's not making use of, say, the Dragon Lords.
Right, and if we are going to see a resurgence of Abzan control, which there has been grumbling about it, they've really been missing something that's big in game swinging in the 6-drop slot since they lost Elspeth Sun's Champion.
Correct.
This card seems like a perfect replacement for that, producing both a creature that can help them block and also providing a life total swing that is pretty significant to the board.
Especially against, like, say, some of the more aggressive decks are going to be in this format, which we know Atarka Red already exists. And actually, it's got quite a few cards that are I hope for that deck.
Exactly.
Well, so you continue on, see what kind of token, what kind of basic we got.
Looks
basic
like we
planes,
got a beautiful new basic planes.
and a plant token.
Right, but right now, let's head to our next pack. All right, we have in here, starting off with the Cultivator Drone. Let's see what our rare in this pack is. And we have a Zendikar Resurgent, which is a 7-mana enchantment that whenever you tap a land for mana, you get to add an extra mana that land produced to your pool, and whenever you cast a creature, draw a card. This card to me reads as, hey, big mana, big dude decks in EDH and in Commander, you should play me because I will be fun to play with.
I agree. But there are also a couple of big mana decks that kind of run around in Standard that could make use of this. Although being 7 mana kind of...
7 mana
their top end is
mana.
already kind of covered.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could probably look forward to seeing some people who are playing, some mono-green commanders or some green-based commander decks. Probably rocking this card.
Definitely. Seems like it's well-suited for those. There is the basic land and the Eldrazi Scion. Let's head to our next pack.
And we're going to cut to the chase. We're not going to mess around with any of these commons, uncommons. Just going to go right to the rare. And we actually have one of the new man lands. The blue-red one. What was it? Wandering Ephemeral.
Fumarole.
There have been a lot of talks of this card actually breaking through into Modern. Not so much really in Standard. Really haven't seen any grumblings of it of late.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many people post lists with this in Standard, although Modern, people have been looking forward to this land coming up because they knew that we were getting a blue-red man land. It's interesting. I think it fits into more of a Delver-style deck, beating in like that, and possibly if there's a blue-red base control deck, I could see it fitting in there.
What I can actually kind of see this slotting into is if a resurgence of a Jeskai control deck comes back up in Modern. I can see this slotting in alongside Celestial Colonnade.
All right, let's move on to the next pack. Me struggling to get into the pack, as usual.
Forgive us, we've opened 6 cases already.
All right, so we're going to start off with the Akum Flameseeker and move on and power through to the rare. And our rare is Matter Reshaper, which is another cornerstone of those colorless-based aggressive decks that we've been talking about. It does actually cost itself colorless mana to cast. It's a 3/2, which for a 3-mana body, not super impressive, but the effect is very impressive. Whenever it dies, you get to reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less, it goes straight into the battlefield. You don't even have to worry about casting it. And if it's not a converted mana cost 3 or less permanent, it just goes to your hand. So this card, at minimum, guarantees you drawing a card when it dies, which is a huge thing that you can use to keep your tempo going in any style of aggressive deck.
Absolutely.
That can support colorless mana.
Last time I checked, card advantage is pretty good in aggressive decks.
That it is. We have our basic land and token. Let's head to our next pack.
All right. Our rare is Remorseless Punishment. Well, there's a lot to be said about this card.
I'll let you talk first, and then I'll have my opinion.
So, in Limited, after playing with this card in the pre-release over the weekend, this card is really good. Really, really good. The fact that you just pay 5 mana and essentially just mind rot your opponent completely out of the game is pretty good. Or forcing them to sacrifice a couple creatures. Or just have them, just happen to lose 10 life. It's pretty good. Some people, when this card was first spoiled, I heard them kind of comparing this to Cruel Ultimatum.
Which is what I heard as well, and I was like, this card gives your opponent too many choices. I agree with you. I think it's a great card in Limited. I think it's a great draft card that any black deck is going to want to put this into. But as far as seeing constructed implications, I think there are too many choices that it gives your opponent. It could see play as a 1 or 2 of in a black style of control deck that runs a lot of duresses and despises. But
maybe essentially just something, couple on the board, maybe say like an Amazon control list like we talked about earlier.
I don't see this living up to the hype that I heard a lot of people talking about it.
I don't either. Limited-wise, first pick, take it every time.
All right. And we
actually have a foil.
Fantastic. So going back to the colorless mana symbol that we talked about, Unknown Shores is not a new card. It is a card we've had in quite a few formats and quite a few sets before. But now instead of tapping for the one generic mana symbol that we had before, it does indeed tap for that colorless mana symbol, and also gives you the chance to filter mana through it for a specific color of mana. We do have our basic land and token, the angel that goes along with Linvala from earlier. Let's head to our next pack. All right, so we start off with some Brute Strength. Let's head to the bottom of the pack and see what our rare is. And our rare for this pack is Ruins of Oran Reef. Now, for me, I'll just go ahead and say, this card's good. In the different decks that are going to be running a lot of colorless creatures, this deck's great. This card's fine. This card is great in a colorless Eldrazi deck in Draft. It's fine in a colorless deck in Standard. For me, the biggest win of this card is the flavor win that this card is. This card reflects the original Oran Reef the Vastwood so beautifully and so perfectly that this card just oozes flavor for me, and I cannot get over that with this card.
I agree with you, JP. This card, like when we first saw this card spoiled, we both were just like, man, flavor win number one. I'm a little disappointed we didn't see Runes of Valakut.
We do get Tears of Valakut as...
We do. We don't get like a ruin where we don't get, incentivize us for playing, say, Waste.
Right.
Which would be kind of cool.
But for those of us who played with the original Zendikar cards, it's nice to see that Wizards of the Coast gave us a lot of flavorful points to relate back to.
Yeah, they even did that back in Battle for Zendikar. They went back and talked a lot about some of the old places that we remember from original Zendikar.
Exactly. There's our basic land and token. Let's head to the next pack.
All right. Cut right to the chase. We get right to the good stuff. Oh, we actually have the second of the 2-man lands. It's a Needle Spires. So what this one is, it taps for red and a blue, or red and a green. Sorry, red and white. Sorry, forgive me. Words were a little hard today. This one turns into a 2/1 double striker. Not really sure how impactful this card's actually going to be in any format.
I think that this card exists, and I think that it exists. The 4-mana activation, I think, is where it really falls apart. Most red-white decks are wanting to be very low to the ground, very aggressive, and 4 mana is a huge investment for what might be 4 damage if this guy gets through unblocked. And even with Double Strike, that's just not a guarantee. So right. I think this card is a design that they needed to do. I don't think this is the design that a lot of the red-white players in decks that are currently established
had they done this and just cut it off at red and white,
card would
absolutely playable.
Card would be too good.
Sure, but us red-white may just kind of like, having good cards every once in a while.
Oh, poor thing. You don't get everything you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get this. All right, there's the basic land and the token. Let's head to the next pack. Our next pack starts off with Searing Light, which is a nice limited removal spell for 1 white mana. Let's keep flicking through the pack and see what we run into as our rare. And our rare for this pack is Jory in Ruin Diver.
Man, we're just getting all the hits of
it's just like
some of the articles that have been posted earlier this week.
What a lot of our articles, what a lot of columnists have been talking about, they've been talking about this card being an engine for card advantage in a blue-red tempo deck, which kind of existed pre-Oath of the Gatewatch. It was more a red-based tempo deck using cards like Abbot of Carroll Keep and Titan Strength to generate card advantage by scrying and pseudo-drawing extra cards. But this guy just straight up draws you an extra card when you cast a second spell, and when you're playing 1 and 2 mana spells, you can almost guarantee keeping that value train running the entire time you have this card out.
Well, now that we've saw this guy, one of your favorite archetypes from what I can recall in Modern is Jeskai Ascendancy combo. Could we actually see a resurgence of that card in Standard?
I don't think so. I think the Jeskai deck that existed is probably going to be token-based if it exists with Ascendancy. This guy's great, but he only triggers the second time you cast a spell in your turn, not every time you cast 2 spells. And a lot of people misread that when they saw the card initially. They were like, I can cast 2 spells and draw a card. No, you only get it on the second spell. And Ascendancy wants you to cast 3, 4, 5 spells in a turn. So Jorian Ruin Diver definitely plays better in these tempo-style decks, but not necessarily in an Ascendancy deck. We do have our basic land in our Mythic Rare advertisement on both sides, because you're usually just getting tokens, and we're ready to head to the next pack.
All right, next pack. Starting off with Consuming Sinkhole. It's a new card. It's okay. Just okay. And our rare is... Ailey. Sorry.
Yeah, I honestly haven't looked at the WotC God book for how to pronounce all these people yet. I know most of them. This is one I don't yet, mostly because
we'll probably have it by Monday. We'll have Maro's little pronunciation.
But the other thing about her is that we really haven't met her in the story guide yet. Like, in the story of Battle for Zendikar, we really haven't run into her yet. So we're probably going to see more of her in the near future. I mean, a 2/3 Dutch Toucher for 2 is great, and I think you'll probably see her slotting into a possible control deck in the near future.
Oh, what about her possibly slotting into an Abzan aggro list, replacing Heir of the Wilds?
I think Abzan aggro wants Heir of the Wilds more, just because it's almost guaranteed to be a 3/3, and it's always a Death Toucher.
Well, I mean, this is always a Death Toucher, and this actually survives a lot more things through a Dromoka's command.
True. I still think Heir of the Wilds is fine if you're running straight Abzan aggro, but Ailey could be run as a supplemental 1 or 2 of in that deck.
Okay.
So we have our basic land and elemental. Let's head to the next pack. And we're ready for our next pack. Again, we open up with another Brute Strength, and we'll dive through the pack to our rare. And our rare is Drana's Chosen, which is a 4-mana 2/2 that has Cohort. This is a new ability we haven't talked about yet. Cohort says that you tap this creature and another ally you control, and you get some sort of effect. For Drana's Chosen, it means you get to put a 2/2 black zombie token onto the battlefield.
Limited? This card is really good.
Outside of that,
not so much.
Okay.
Seem to do a lot of work over this weekend in the pre-releases.
Oh, we do have a foil in here. It is an uncommon, and it is Cinder Barons. So one of the things that Wizards of the Coast discussed in their previews for this set is that they sought to produce a cycle of comes into play tapped lands in each of the ally colors that they could keep using over and over again, because the ones that they created in non-slot...
Invasion block, I believe.
Yeah, it was one of those two blocks.
Like Elfin Palace and that type.
And they were very location-specific, and they couldn't use them in other sets. So they created this more generic cycle, similar to how they created generic cycles of the shocks so that they could put them in other sets other than Ravnica, and then proceeded to put them only in sets that say Ravnica. Anyway, so there's our Cinder Barons. We also have a Mountain and this Eldrazi Scion token. Let's head to the next pack.
All right, we'll go ahead and cut right to the chase here. Rare is Gladeheart Cavalry. Limited-wise, this card is rather absurd. The support 6.
Right, which this is the first card we've actually seen and discussed with support. So for those of you who are new to the mechanics, when it says support X, where X is whatever number you want, that means that you put a +1/+1 counter on up to that number of creatures. With support 6, you can choose up to 6 creatures you have in play, including this card, because it's already in play when its ability goes on the stack, and put a +1/+1 counter on those creatures. So if you wanted to, at minimum, for 7 mana, you get a 7/7.
And ideally in green, at 7 mana, you're going to have other creatures in play. That's going to just grow your team.
And then the life gain off this, again, in limited, very good. Standard, probably nice in like a casual
Commander
token deck.
Maybe.
Yep. But in Standard, not so much. So there are our token and land. Let's head on to the next pack. So there. And let's see what secret she has in here. We have Combat Trick Slip Through Space as our first card. Let's dive to the rare. And our rare is the foil buy box promo Goblin Dark Dwellers with its original art. We already discussed this card. This card's great. This card casts spells for free. Free spells are awesome. We also have our basic land and our token. Let's head on to the next pack.
All right. And our rare is Deceiver of Forms.
7 mana for an 8/8 seems good.
7 mana for an 8/8 is pretty good. Unlimited card is very good. So I'll do a lot of different things. I had an opponent during pre-release turn theirs into Breaker of Armies, turn them into to 10/9s or 10/8s. Sorry,
that's still not fair.
It's not fair. Not fair at all. But at 7 mana, you'll probably want one of this in your limited deck. Absolute bomb. Like, card's really good for that particular format. Other formats,
cool casual card.
Cool casual card. And time will tell. Maybe breakthrough in Commander.
I saw you kind of sneaking up on it to see if there was anything else in there. I did see we had a foil, so why don't we go ahead and flip and see what the foil was.
I did not actually catch that.
And it is an Expedition Raptor. Raptors go.
This card is actually really great.
Yeah. Again, talking about limited, this guy coming in and making himself a 3/3 plus putting a +1/+1 counter on another creature is great. And in the blue-white Flyers archetype, just putting 2 +1/+1 counters on your Flyers before you even attack swings through for 2 extra damage. That's just going to keep repeating and getting through. Card is wonderful.
And then we have our basic land and our Knight Ally token.
And let's head to the next pack. And we have our next pack here of Oath of the Gatewatch. Let's see what we have in here. First up is Maw of Kozilek. Let's dive to that rare as the wastes go by. And our rare is Oath of Gideon, who just happened to have been protecting this pack. So Oath of Gideon, the Oath cycle, all have a continuous effect that continues to affect how Planeswalkers interact with the game. Specifically with Oath of Gideon, its second ability has Planeswalkers enter the battlefield with an extra loyalty counter on them. And then, even on his own, as a 3 mana, put 2 +1/+1 allies into play. You can use that to trigger allies if you have an ally deck. And putting extra counters when your Planeswalkers enter play is pretty solid.
Yeah, this card is pretty good. I don't know how impactful it will be in Constructed, but ally deck creeps around, probably comes into light, maybe. Limited-wise, still a pretty good card. Anytime you get 2 guys for 3 mana, it's not terrible.
Usually a good thing. And not to mention the ally trigger there, also good in limited. We do have our basic land and token. Let's head to the next pack.
All right. First card we have here is Park Mage's Gambit. Let's continue to dive and see what we get. Wow, man, we were really just hitting all the hits of this set. So we have Thought-Knot Seer. This card is great.
Do you know what I'm thinking about this card?
That Eldrazi Displacer guy that we showed earlier? Mm-hmm. I believe he's actually in that list. Again, now we have up on Comictown.
Yeah, and I mean, along with that, this card is just great in all formats. In the new black, whatever other color you want to pair with it, Eldrazi deck, this guy can come out as early as turn 2.
Which is absurd.
Which a 4/4 on turn 2 is usually a good thing in formats, if I remember correctly. But even in Standard, if you cast him as a 4/4 for 4 on turn 4, and you're getting an excellent effect choosing to just rip a card out of your opponent's hand and get to make terrible, terrible puns while doing so is a major, major plus.
The puns have already started.
Oh, I'm enjoying them like LSV streaming on a Thursday.
Right.
We do have our basic forest and land. In all seriousness, Thought-Knot Seer is one of the premier rares of this set.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is more than going to warp a couple different formats.
And it will make immediate impacts.
It's just to be seen as to where.
Like especially if you're coming to the 5K on Saturday or playing the GPT on Saturday, be prepared for this card.
Yeah, this card is ready to ruin your day, and he'll look deep into your soul and basically...
And he has a really important power and toughness, especially for Modern. He doesn't die to probably the most played...
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't
Lightning
die
Bolt. To Lightning Bolt, which is huge. All right, we got our next pack here. Let's go ahead and dive in. Starting off with, I believe, a Spark Mage's Gambit, and it is a Spark Mage's Gambit. Let's see what our rare in this pack is. Waste goes by. And our rare in this pack is a Deep Fathom Skulker, which is a devoid 6-mana creature for a 4/4. But whenever any creature you control deals combat damage to a player, as long as you got this guy in play, you get to draw a card, and you can activate his ability for 3 and a colorless and make a creature unable to be blocked. Basically guaranteeing you that as long as that creature survives through combat, you're getting to draw a card for 4 mana.
Limited ones, this card is great.
Exactly where I was going. Limited, huge limited bomb. Outside of that,
everybody loves drawing extra cards.
We do have our token and our land. Let's head to our next pack.
All right. Have another Maul Kozilek. Let's continue on. See if we have something else really cool. We have Mina and Den Wildborn. Another 4-mana 4/4. This card is really, really good, especially limited. Standard-wise, will remain to be seen. Mm-hmm. It is perfectly costed. Power toughness-wise, great.
Mm-hmm. For me, I look at these guys and I see a really nice companion for Oracle of the Moldiah in any commander deck. Like the ability to keep ramping up for extra mana, and then once you've got your big dudes in play, you can bounce lands and give your creatures trample. If you've got enough mana in play and you've already got 2 huge dudes to swing through, pay 4 mana, return 2 lands to your hand, and give a couple creatures trample, put those lands right back down, and swing through for massive amounts of damage, plus play another huge big guy.
On that note, like we have that red-green landfall deck that really hasn't done a whole lot in Standard because it doesn't have a whole lot of staying power. This might actually give them the edge, gives them like a really good card at the top end with the ability to bounce lands and keep re-triggering their landfall.
And 2 mana for that landfall ability is not a lot, so you're right, this might slot into that red-green landfall deck. We do, of course, have our land, and this is Nissa, who is on the back of an Eldrazi Scion. Let's head to our next booster pack. All right, so we have Consuming Sinkhole. Let's go ahead and keep diving through to find our rare. And our rare in this pack is another Overwhelming Denial. This is the Surge counterspell that we talked about earlier.
Looks like we have a little hidden foil back there, bud.
We do have a hidden foil back here. This is Prophet of Distortion. This is a very, very straightforward card that was built pretty much exclusively for draft. Again, 4 mana, and this one just draws a card, doesn't give the creature unblockable this time. And it's also 1 mana for a 1/2, which for the blue-black Devoid decks, pretty good place to start for those.
Absolutely.
We do have our land and our token. Let's head on to the next booster pack.
And yet again, we have another Brute Strength to start us off. Starting to dig a little deeper here. And we have Call of the Gatewatch. This is a really interesting card, JP. They started this kind of a cycle with, what was it, Sarkhan's Triumph? And was it Dragons or Khans?
That was in Dragons. We had Sarkhan's Triumph because he finally saved the dragons, and then for 2 and a red, you got to search your deck for dragon and put it in your hands. Now, in Oath of the Gatewatch, we have 2 and a white and search your deck for Planeswalker and put it in your hand.
This is a really unique effect. This is the first time outside of cards that say just let you search for anything that we get to go search for a Planeswalker specifically.
But, again, it's a tutor. It doesn't impact the board. I think this has a lot of staying power in formats that are looking for a one of a specific card like Commander, but I don't see this making impacts anywhere else.
Could potentially, depending on what type of Super Friends might kind of pop up between now and
True.
other sets coming out in the future.
Correct. We do have our token and our basic land. Let's head to the next pack. Here, let's see what she has in this pack for us. And we'll start with the Eldrazi Aggressor and head on down to the rare. And our rare in this pack is Tyrant of Valakut. This is another search spell, so if you cast another spell this turn, you get to cast this card for 3 and 2 red, as opposed to 5 and 2 red. As it is a dragon, it does have flying. And it has a special trigger if you pay the search cost. If you did pay the search cost, it gets to fire a lightning bolt at any target creature or player. Now, this card's cool. If you played an extra spell this turn, you get a cool extra effect. I'm sorry, even in pre-release, I was very, very mad on this card, and I had players coming up to me, even into Edda Giant, saying, you know, we had this card in our hand, and we got to cast it, and we got the extra effect on it, and it still didn't seem like it was too game-swinging either.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the search spells which is not, like, super great. Again, a potential 5/4 flyer for 5 mana is pretty good. You just take that away, the card would be adequate, be pretty good for a draft format, but it's just 7 mana for a 5/4 with the off chance in the red deck that you might get to that type of mana.
And for me, the thing that shocked me the most was the fact that people just in draft were just not that impressed with the card where it was supposed to be the most impressive, which was...
You mean Two-Headed Giant and Sealed?
Right, Two-Headed Giant specifically. People were just not as impressed with that card as I thought they would be. There is the token in the basic land. Let's head to our next pack.
All right. We're actually getting really close to the end here, guys, so kind of bear with us here.
And we have...
Dimensional Infiltrator. You know what? I actually have not read this guy, nor do I actually remember him on the spoiler. So let's learn something together here.
Okay, so it is a 2/1 for 1 and a blue. It is devoid, so we've kind of got a little bit of a... I almost said Stormcrow. It's not a Stormcrow.
Almost like a Welkin turn.
Yeah, it's a Velkin turn sort of thing. It does have flash, so you can flash this in at the end of your opponent's turn, or in response to them declaring something as an attacker. And it's got the activated ability that you can pay 1 and a colorless, and then you get to basically ingest the top card of your opponent's deck. If it's a land, you have the option of bouncing this guy back to their hand. So, basically, the dream is to declare this as a blocker and then be able to bounce it without taking any damage off this. In general, they can just do whatever they want. I think this is a cool card. I think that's where it ends, though. It's just kind of cool. It's one of those weird design spaces that I don't think the payoff is
We see it
going
upon
to make
occasion
it.
with like cards like, say, Blinking Spirit, if we want to go back a little old school for some of those players who've been playing for quite a while. I was a little reminiscent of that card. And in the limited formats, when that card was legal, the card was pretty good. I can imagine this guy being a pretty good role filler for a blue-black Devoid deck or a blue-red Devoid deck. Just a way to keep replaying him and reactivating certain effects off of, say, like Molten Nursery, Nettle Drone, stuff like that.
All right. There's our token in basic land. Let's head on to the next card. And we're ready for our next booster pack. So we have Alpha Protector as our first card. Let's head on through to the next to our rare. And our rare for this pack is Munda's Vanguard, a 3/3 for 5 that has the cohort ability we've talked about before, that we can tap it and another ally, and put a +1/+1 counter on each of the creatures you control. This is an intro pack rare, so if you buy the intro pack that has this at the front of it, you do guarantee getting this card. For me, great in limited, not so great anywhere else.
Yeah, a little overcosted with a 5 mana 3/3, but has a very, very relevant ability.
Yep.
I think the card will be good and limited.
But not there. We have a token in basic land. Let's head to our next pack.
All right, and our rare is Seagate Wreckage. It's another one of the non-basic lands that adds a colorless mana, but also has a unique ability that we really haven't seen on a card in a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, being able to draw a card conditionally. This condition, obviously, being if you have no other cards in your hand. the deck that Lexi Mettler actually uploaded today, which was a Grixis Eldrazi deck, used this guy to get card advantage once you went Hellbent, which is an old keyword that meant you had no cards in your hand.
Because essentially, if I remember correctly, her list was more of an aggressive deck, so you're going to run out of cards very, very quickly. This is a way to try to refuel and potentially push through land pockets when you actually hit them in that style of a deck.
Exactly, and gain a little bit of card advantage off it as well. We do have our Plains and Angel. Let's head to our next pack.
I think that's one of the cards might need a little bit of time before it breaks out.
All right. Our next pack, let's find out what we have in here. We have Expedite as our first card. Let's head on to find rare. And our rare in this pack is Oath of Nissa, which has been hyped as a one-mana cantrip that we have just not had in Standard for quite some time. It's not quite as good as that. It does restrict you to what you can get in looking at the top 3 cards of your deck, specifically a creature, land, or planeswalker, although with most decks you're almost guaranteed to hit this card, or hit a type of card that this card will let you draw.
Mm-hmm. And the second ability is not really irrelevant, especially in Commander. There are a lot of people who like to play a lot of planeswalkers in their deck, and giving them the ability to just tap their lands for any color mana to cast said planeswalkers is pretty good.
Yeah. We do have a foil, which is another Oath in this pack, the Oath of Gideon that we talked about earlier. Don't think we need to continue addressing this card, other than the fact that the foiling on this guy is pretty sweet. We have our basic land and our token. Let's head to our next pack. And
all right, we have Crush of Tentacles,
which I'm looking forward to seeing people in many formats cast, because this card is a blowout in any format that you end up having it cast against you with the surge cost.
I did have this cast against me on Sunday in a pre-release.
How did that feel?
Not good. That card is a big blowout.
Yeah.
If you have ever had experience playing against some of the other mass bounce effects, Cyclonic Rift, Evacuation, and older formats, you know how backbreaking those cards are. And then one that just bounces, not only permits your opponent's control, absurd.
Yep. And putting an 8/8 Octopus into play.
And it's going to lead to a lot of feel-bads.
Yeah. There is a foil in this pack. It is the Eldrazi Immobilizer, which has a blanket effect of causing each creature with toughness greater than its power being unable to block this turn. Basically neutralizes any walls that your opponent might have out, or any guys with big toughnesses. Again, cool limited card outside of that.
This card is really good in limited, actually.
I've seen more than enough people abuse that in
and again,
their
another really
events.
cool looking zombie token.
Too true. Let's head to our next pack. We do have a Makindi Aeronauts as our first card. Let's see what our rare is. And our rare for this pack is Reality Smasher. Another card that's been discussed as a possible include in a Eldrazi deck in Modern. A 5/5 for 5 with Trample and Haste, and causing your opponent to discard an extra card whenever they want to target it is...
I mean, sign me up. This card is fantastic.
It swings for 5 out of nowhere and can swing a game very, very quickly. I think the aggressive decks in Standard want this card, and I think the black-based Eldrazi decks in Modern also want this card, because this card can come out as early as turn 3, and that's a lot of power coming in very quickly on
5/5
turn 3.
Haster on turn 3. Last time I checked, seems really good.
Yep. And we have our next pack here to open up. And our rare in this pack is...
Dread Defiler. I had this card in my sealed pool over the weekend. It was pretty good. Pretty high on the mana cost at 7, but for S6-8 body and the ability to fling your guys from the graveyard, it closed out a couple games pretty quick for me.
I was going to say, a big dude like this, if you can land this and not have it removed in Limited, is a very, very, very solid threat. Outside of that, it's not going to really make waves in any constructed format outside maybe Commander or a kitchen table deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, of course, we have this lovely land here, which is a foil basic mountain. We have our regular basic land.
Basic
and
forest,
token.
sir. 'Cause we can't read.
I'm good at lands. This is red. No, this is green. This is a forest. We do have our other basic island here. And let's head to our next pack. Right, we have our next pack here. Interestingly, we haven't talked too much about expeditions yet. We haven't really seen an expedition yet. We do have, it looks like, 4 booster packs after this one left. We might get an expedition, we might not. These did come from a case that we opened here in the store. So we've either got an expedition here or in the other 5 packs that we're opening outside of this box.
Yep.
So do keep on the lookout for those expeditions. You can open those in these packs. Let's see what our rare is in this pack. And our rare is a mythic rare. This is World Breaker. This has been hyped up as the older cousin of Acidic Slime because he does destroy more or less any non-land permanent or any non-creature permanent when he enters the battlefield. He's huge, and if someone should deal with him, they can play 2 and a colorless, sack a land, and bring this guy right back to their hand to keep recycling him, killing more artifacts, more enchantments, more lands, shutting your opponents directly out of the game that way.
Again, this is just another one of those chase cards from this set that could potentially slot into a modern Tron deck. More look forward to it to seeing some play in the various Eldrazi ramp decks that are in Standard.
Right. I've seen some decks try this in. I've seen at least 1 or 2 copies in some sideboards I've seen headed into this weekend. I've definitely seen a couple in the main deck as well.
Absolutely.
We do have our basic land and token. Let's head to our next pack.
All right.
And what have we?
We have Stoneforge Masterwork, our first equipment that we're actually going to speak about.
Right. This set does have a little bit of an equipment sub-theme, but doesn't really shove it too far to the front. Thanks, Shelby. It is cool that it has a coat of arms effect for just 1 creature that you have on the battlefield, but I don't see this making waves in too many formats.
Well, limited-wise, this card is an absolute bomb. I had this card, again, one of the cards I had in my sealed pool from over the weekend. I had it in a red-white Allies deck. And like the 1/4 Vigilant Ally from this current set. I suited that guy up with this card and just made him pretty much unblockable. It's a really sweet card. Again, it's another one of those cards that will lead to potentially really large blowouts because you're just going to get destroyed out of nowhere with this card.
Exactly. We do have our land and our token. Let's head to our next pack. We have this one. Our first card we have in here is Expedite. Let's expedite ourselves to the end of this pack and see what our rare is. And our rare in this pack is Sylvan Advocate, a 2/3 for 2 that gets +2/+2 if you have 6 lands in play. This, for me, is a very easy slot replacement in the Abzan decks that people have been running for some time. Hangerback Walker has been the quote-unquote worst card in that deck for some time, and this seems like one of the 2 cards, along with Ailey that we saw earlier, that could be poised to fill the spot that Hangerback Walker has been serving.
Also missed a really key part of that card. It also gives your land creatures +2/+2. So those decks are playing like Shambling Vents, if I'm not mistaken. So turning your Shambling Vents into a 4/5 lifelinker is actually really good.
This is one of those times where me not reading cards is actually biting me. I legitimately did not even know that clause was on that card until you literally just now mentioned it. That makes playing manlands with this card huge. We have Shambling Vents being a 4/5. I think that's the biggest boon that you get with this card.
And even like the new one, Hissing Quagmire, being a 4/4 first or Death Toucher is really
means that
good.
it can block and survive more often than what Ailey would do as a 2/3.
Right.
We do have our land and our token card. Let's head to our next to last booster pack.
All right, well, we have Remorseless Punishment again. We already talked about this card a little bit. Again, very good limited card. Outside of that, we're really not sure yet.
Too much.
Kind of time will tell on this one.
All right, and there's not a land card. There's a foil instead. We have the Surge Sorcery Boulder Salvo, which deals 4 damage to target creature for 5 mana, but if you can trigger Surge, that's 4 damage to a creature for only 2 mana.
Great removal spell, unlimited.
Could be an interesting sideboard card in Standard as well. We have the Mountain to go with that card.
Oh,
and of
we
course,
have the super rare non-token card.
Exactly. Double promotional card. Begin battling Eldrazi today. All right, let's head to our very last booster pack for our opening. Let's
warm it up, guys. Let's see if we get the Expedition here.
All right. What do we have here? So we're going to start off with an Akum Flameseeker, right? And our final rare is a Mythic. It's something that I've kind of nicknamed Noseface. An uncounterable 7-mana 5/5 that is flying and hexproof, and prevents instants and sorcery spells you control from being countered while you have Sinks of the Final Word in play. This card is just a giant no to your opponent trying to interact with any of your spells while this guy is on the field. This is definitely filling a space that Pearl Lake Ancient filled before, in kind of being a control mirror breaker.
Absolutely. Again, outside of a true dedicated control deck, I don't see this card seeing a whole lot of play. In your group, there's always going to be that one guy who wants to play counter Magic. You're not going to have any fun. I'm going to have all the fun.
And to finish it off, we do have our final planes and our final token for the box opening. Thanks for checking out our video of an Oath of the Gatewatch box opening. Just to remind you of our announcements from the beginning of the video, head to comictown.net to check out articles and news from Magic the Gathering Monday through Thursday.
And come see JP and I on Friday for Win-A-Box Standard, Win-A-Box Draft, and to purchase all these singles and many more that you saw us open today.
And finally, remember to head to the Columbus Courtyard West on January 23rd for the $5,000 Comic Town Winter Classic Tournament. It's a Standard tournament, and we can't wait to see you there. Thanks from all of us here at Comic Town.
And we'll see you in April for Shadows of Innistrad.